thought.
Okay, it looks like we're live. We're going to come to order. Today is the Wednesday, May 5th, 2010 regular meeting of the Glendale Planning Commission. Call roll, please.
Commissioner Landrigan.
Present.
Commissioner Lee.
Here.
Commissioner Schitz.
Here.
Commissioner Yesayan.
Here.
And Chair Kane.
Here. Report regarding posting of agenda. Great. Would everyone rise and please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, approval of minutes from April 21st. Comments? Ms. Landrigan?
Yes, I have two comments. They are on page 10. In opposition, the fourth paragraph, or third, Ms. Dalma Kurt showed visual photographs of how the proposed project would impact her property and the neighborhood. Ms. Kurt said she does not oppose use of the flat pad for project location. Mr. Kurt Kirch said he would oppose use of the existing flat pad. I believe, is that correct? I think they both did not oppose the use of the flat pad. Then it says the Kirches indicated in their response to Ms. Landrigan's question regarding a driveway easement negotiation that they had earlier negotiation with the property owner. Okay, that's fine. Just two more paragraphs down. Commissioner Landrigan remarked that the applicant has a right to develop. If there are no ways to meet reasonable negotiation, the applicant can engineer easements themselves, and engineering fees could be sent to the neighbors. I don't believe I said that.
That one's new.
I know what I said, but to paraphrase it, I think I said solutions would impact the neighbors. Engineering solutions would impact the neighbors.
I don't recall exactly what you said, but I suspect that what they wrote down was not what you said. All right. So that needs to be adjusted to more properly reflect the sentiment. Anything else?
That's all I could find that seems to be amiss with those changes. Unless others have them, I would move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and approval. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Landrigan.
Yes.
Commissioner Lee.
Yes.
Commissioner Schitz.
Aye.
Commissioner Yesayan.
Yes.
And Chair Kane.
Yes, on a vote of 5-0, the minutes of April 21st have been approved as noted. Agenda item 5, oral communications. I have no cards. So we'll move to agenda item 6. It's a zoning appeal. It is a standards variance case, PVAR 2009-025. This matter is heard as a de novo hearing. Testimony taken at the planning hearing officer's hearing should be repeated because the commission does not review the tapes of those meetings. Decisions rendered today will be based on the evidence presented at this hearing and the evidence in the file, including appeal documents, staff reports, and letters received. Individuals speaking today should therefore present all evidence which they may wish this commission to consider. A handout describing the appeals process is available at the front counter. They are considered public hearings. The Commission will consider testimony from the appellant, applicant, staff, and any member of the public wishing to speak. If you wish to speak, please fill out a card and present it to the recording secretary. And this is PVAR 2009-025. It's at 239 Jesse Avenue. The appellant is Richard and Myrtle Wildeson at 230. It says 233 Jesse Avenue. Is that correct? All right, so that is correct. Thank you. And it is a standards variance to legalize the unpermitted construction of a bedroom and bath without complying with the zoning code in the following areas: providing the minimum interior setback of 4 feet, complying with the maximum allowable lot coverage of 40%, and providing one additional covered and enclosed parking space. It is exempt from environmental recommendation. The recommendation is to sustain the zoning administrator's denial of the variance case. Staff is represented by Mr. Duong.
Thank you, Chairman Kane, and good evening, Commissioners. The item before you, as you stated, is an appeal of standards variance case number PVAR 2009-025. This is an appeal to legalize an unpermitted construction consisting of a bedroom, a bathroom, as well as a storage room and a patio cover. If I may, I would like to go over the site plan with you so you get a better understanding of the project. Originally, the property was developed in 1936 with a detached single-family residence and a detached garage located at the also this project met code, and if we were to the proposed legalization, it appears that the project, even per today's standard, appears to meet code as well. So the area in question, as I pointed out to you, would connect the detached house to the detached garage, which essentially, to our zoning code, we would consider this as one structure now, by the mere fact that there's a common roof. And in determining as such, there is a violation for setback, because a detached garage alone would be permitted to be located along the property line in the zone. But once you attach something else that is not a garage, it would need to meet the minimum standard for interior setback, which is 6 feet for a brand new structure. However, for the addition, such as this case, if one were to attach the proposed addition to a house, it would only need to be 4 feet, because the height of the house is 20 feet or less. So in this case, as you can see, the site planning both violates the interior setback, which are located along the side as well as the rear, as well as lot coverage. So the proposed lot coverage is 43.9%. The maximum allowed in this zone is 40%. So essentially, they're over 3.9%.
I'm sorry, what's the lot size, please?
The lot size is 5,094 square feet.
Thank you.
The other items, the third items that the applicant is proposing to legalize is also a garage requirement. Any addition in the city would require the applicant or the property owner to meet parking standards, which essentially means 2 covered and enclosed parking spaces at a minimum, but it could increase to 3 or 4 depending on the size of the livable space. In this case, the minimum number of parking spaces required is 2 parking spaces. The applicant is only able to provide 1 oversized parking garage. So essentially, in this case, the reason why staff determined this garage to be an oversized single-car garage is that it does not have the minimum opening required for a 2-car garage. So this is the basic request by the applicant. I will leave additional comments till later in the hearing. But if you have any questions about the site planning and the subject application, I would be more than happy to answer them at this time. And this property is zone R1, floor area district 2, and it's located in the horse overlay zone.
Any questions for staff at this time? I do have a question. Is there a code requirement for separation of a garage from the addition?
Yes, Chairman Kane. The minimum standard for distance separation between structures or building is 5 feet eave to eave.
Okay.
So existing illegal bathroom and closet to be removed in dotted line, that is there now, right?
Yes, correct. I also have photos that were taken when I did a site inspection of the illegal construction.
Any other questions for staff at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the appellant's case. I have a card from 2 individuals. One is Brian Wilderson, and the other is Haybird Mashihi. are you together? Is this like a joint presentation? One of you should approach, so we hear it on the microphone. And then we'll go from there.
Brian Wilderson. I have a letter just to read from my father who was unable to attend tonight.
Okay.
And that's all basically I have. So
Okay,
he's
so
actually presenting the case. I just have a letter to read.
Very good. Okay. Well, then you have, between the two of you, you have 15 minutes to go through it. And however and whenever you want to read the letter as it relates to that, it's your time.
I could read it now if you...
Whatever you'd like to do.
I am sorry I am unable to attend this meeting due to health issues. I am 70 years old and my wife is 69. We have been married for 48 years. Glendale is the only city where we have ever lived. It is a good city. I called the city for advice because I was having a problem replacing a rain gutter at the rear of my garage. An inspector from Neighborhood Services came and looked the situation over. Several weeks later, Neighborhood Services sent us a letter stating that we have a room addition that was built without permits. We were shocked. We purchased our house in 1983, and we were unaware of any violations. The house is the same square footage today as when we bought it. We went to the city to see if we could get permits to make the addition legal. The gentleman at the permit desk said there were procedures we had to address first before any permits could be issued. He suggested we hire someone to help us with this process. We contacted Armick, and I explained to him that I made a big mistake calling the city of Glendale for help, and now I am in a lot of trouble for something I did not do. I told him we purchased the house in 1983 unaware there was a problem. My wife and myself are on Social Security, and with our medical expenses we have limited funds. Armick reduced his normal fee considerably, and we are extremely grateful to him. This has been a real hardship on us, so I hope you will grant us this variance so we continue with the permit process. Thank you, Richard Wilderson. Thank you for letting me read that.
Hello and good afternoon.
Feel free to raise the mic. You'll be a lot more comfortable.
Thank you. Good afternoon, fellow commissioners. I'm going to present the case, and I have a set of documents that prove first when the structure, some dates about the structure and when the structure existed, the addition when it existed, with termite reports and Glendale Federal Bank appraising the entire house, and also a permit from the City of Glendale, which shows that the City of Glendale did see the addition, and it disregarded the fact that it was illegal at the time.
By the way, for the record, just identify yourself by name, please.
My name is Haberd Minas Masihi. The first document I will show is a report from the Glendale Federal Bank. It's an appraisal, and it has it's dated to...
While you're looking that up, by the way, prior to the meeting, the appellant asked about if he had paperwork, what would happen. And I told him that it would be turned over and become part of the public record. He understands that he'll have to approach you guys later and get copies. So please continue.
Thank you. This appraisal shows that in January of 1997, the addition was present with a drawing on it. Would you like me to show it to you?
First, so what you're saying in 1997, you have, is that an appraisal?
Yes.
You have an appraisal in 1997 that shows it
Yes,
exists.
and it shows the existing.
If we need to see it, we'll, if we
Yes.
question or if we need to see it, whatever, we'll ask to see it physically.
Thank you.
At this point, I'm willing to take your word for it that you have that. So continue.
I have a termite report dating back to February 15, 1983, before the Wildensons purchased the home. That's February 15, 1983, and this termite report also has a drawing of the addition inside of it on the back. I have a permit issued from the City of Glendale Permit number is BB20020975. The permit is it's a roofing permit, and it states here that the permit is only for the back of the house, and that the front and the garage roofing still they need to be sheeted, but half of the house has received solid sheeting, and over here it states that the square footage of the roofing is 1,300, which clearly means that the addition was present at the time.
When was that?
And this was 12th of June 2002. The City of Glendale approved and finalized this permit. Continuing, I also have a document that I'm going to read. It's a letter to the city from the neighbors, and to the City of Glendale Planning Department. Richard and Myrtle Wilderson are a very respected couple that have lived in our block for many years. They are loving and caring senior citizens, and we are fortunate to have them as neighbors. Their house is one of the nicest on the street. It is well kept and well cared for. We as neighbors support their request for a variance, and it's signed by their neighbors. Now I will present the 4 findings for the variance. For the first finding, hardships for the owners of the home. The current residents did not build this addition. They purchased the home as stated in 1983. They've been living there for over 27 years, and they had nothing to do with the addition. And they found out about this when, as stated, they requested for assistance from the City of Glendale. The lot is a relatively small lot. It's about 5,000 square feet, and we cannot relocate the addition anywhere else on the lot because it would interfere with the setbacks, the front setbacks. Now, as far as the 4-foot setback for the garage goes, the garage has been existing since 1932 when it was built. And 1936. And it was a 2-car garage back then, and it will be granted that the commission approves this variance. It will be converted into a 2-car garage and will meet the requirements for a 2-car garage. For the second finding, once again, I'll state that the addition was built before the residents purchased the property in 1983, and they've been good to the neighbors and neighborhood. They're a quiet family. Sorry, one second. As far as whether or not the lot is unique, it's unique because it's been their home for 27 years, and they do not wish to relocate themselves anywhere else. They love the city, as stated in the letter. They love living in Glendale, and they enjoy living within their neighbors. For the third finding of the variance, there's no increase in traffic circulation, noise, or any other similar concerns, and the neighborhood is very much
supporting approval of the variance. As far as the 4th finding, where to hold the city ordinance, The two-car garage, as I stated before, was built in 1936, and the addition does not affect the garage in any way where the garage becomes illegal, other than the fact that it needs a 4-foot setback from the walls. However, when it was built in 1936, the setbacks were met at the time. It was detached, and there was no setback required once the garage is detached from the property. If you have any questions, I will answer them.
Please, Mr. Lee.
Just for housekeeping purposes, when the other gentleman read the letter, he talked about hardship. Now, does the Mr. Wilderson 233 Jesse Avenue as well?
Yes, I believe so.
And he owns 239 Jesse Avenue.
Yes.
Okay. And I guess I have to look at your termite report, because when you mentioned that the property was purchased in 1983, and I'm assuming that termite report shows the drawing of this structure connecting the house to garage.
Yes, it shows a drawing of the addition.
Now would be the time to turn that in.
And you also, mentioned roofing permit of a 1,300 in 2002, but, your house is 1,296 square foot, so that doesn't really, qualify, additional square foot, because, your roofing almost covers just, the one-story building that's existing building, so.
I understand that. That's why I stated in the permit, it states that this is only for the back of the house, and it states on the...
Does it have a drawing?
No, but it states on the finalizing of the permit, it states that the front end of the house and garage to remain with wood shingles. So the front end and the garage were not included in the 1,300 square feet, which is that clearly shows that the addition was there at this time.
Is that evidence presented to the zoning administrator?
Yes, I will present it.
I'm sorry, that said back then that it was to remain wood shingles. But it's not wood shingles now, right? It's been re-roofed since then?
Yes,
So there should be, in theory, there's a successive permit for that, if you follow me. Because that said, correct me if I'm wrong, that the existing wood shingles remain on the front of the house.
Yes.
But right now, it's not wood shingles on the front of the house. I'm kind of going, maybe I'm leading a little astray, but I believe if I look at the picture right now, those don't look like wood shingles. So what I'm saying, it's a little bit of field, so maybe I'll just stop it. All I'm saying is you got a permit for roofing for part of the house.
Yes.
At some point, the rest of the house got re-roofed. And you just may not have access to that permit. We'll move on.
Okay. All right.
Could we see the permits, please?
Yes.
If I may add something to answer Commissioner Lee's questions regarding whether the zoning administrator at that time was privy to the documents that the appellant or the applicant is referring to, yes, that was part of her determination. We have copies of those documentations.
You already have copies of
Yes.
these documents? Okay. Well, anyway, so would you bring them forward so we can see them, please?
Yes.
So applicant's primary residence is 239 Jesse Avenue?
Yes, that's correct.
233 Jesse Avenue is used for what?
I'm not sure exactly.
Because, I think the letter mentioned something about living off of Social Security. I'm just curious as to ownership of two houses and where they were living. Because he was claiming economic hardship, that's why.
Yes, they do have economy hardship.
Ms. Landrigan?
It shows that the applicant lives in 233 Jesse Avenue and not 239. I think it's very confusing for us that the applicant is Richard Wilderson at 233 Jesse Avenue, but we are talking about 239 Jesse Avenue.
Sorry.
Where
But where does he live?
where does he live?
Yes, please.
Brian Wilderson, I'm also their son. I live at 239 Jesse. I also live with my father at 239 Jesse. My mother lives at 233 Jesse. So my dad stays with me most of the time due to some health issues my mom and dad have, and 48 years of marriage. Without getting into too much personal information, it's 2 houses with 3-member family, and so he does live there with me.
That clarifies it for me.
That
That helps. Thank you.
more personal.
It does help. That's
Thank you.
more than enough. Any other questions for the appellant at this time? All right. You'll have a rebuttal period in a few minutes for anything that may come up with our questions to staff or anything else staff may raise.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Staff response?
Thank you, Chairman Kane and Commissioners. This is actually a difficult application, and staff completely understand why the property owner would like to keep and legalize this addition while not meeting code. But on the other hand, staff needs to do our part, which means in reviewing a standard variance, we need to apply the 4 findings, and we need to really consider whether they are applicable or they can be found. These findings can support the request. And according to the zoning administrators, in her decision letter to the applicant, these 4 findings could not be supported in approving the project. The appellant just stated that the lot is too small and that the property owner purchased the property with the illegal addition. So in a sense, they did not commit the violation. And that the neighborhood supports this variance. I mean, if you look at the drawings in the back, behind you, there's a map showing the subject property. This lot is essentially similar to other lots in the surrounding area. It is flat, it's rectangular, and it's developed essentially in the same manner as the other properties. So from that perspective, staff and the zoning administrator were not able to say that there's a hardship or the lot is unique. So on that basis, staff would dispute what the applicant just stated. In terms of the addition that existed at the time of purchase, that may be the case, and we've seen cases like that in the past, where a potential buyer is not aware or was not aware whether or not there are illegal work on the subject property without coming to us, without coming to the city or calling the city. So this is not unusual. While it is unfortunate, it's not an unusual situation. However, with that said, the new owner, once he or she purchases the property, it becomes his or her problem. So, and this is the case. This is a prime example of that. And the applicant also stated that the neighborhood supports this variance. While that may be true, that is not one of the bases for approving a variance request. So it would have to tie back to whether there are hardships, whether the lot is unique, and whether the request would negatively impact other properties or adjoining properties, and whether it would impact the neighborhoods. Those are the basis of approving of a variance and the required findings. So given what you stated, staff would again recommend that those are not legitimate findings to support an approval by the Planning Commission for this project. And it was also brought forth that an appraisal as well as the termite report stated that or identified the addition in questions. Well, those documents are not building permits. They are simply documentations by outside sources that are not handled by the city. So the city does not recognize that as being legitimate or constitute the legality of those of the work. So I urge you not to consider those information, because our record states that back in August 10, 1936, that was when the permit was issued for the construction or development of this lot. And the permit clearly states that the purpose of the building was to construct a residence and a garage. So it states nothing to the fact of the addition in question. So, and there's a drawing that was attached to this permit that clearly states that there was a separation between the residence and the garage. And according to this drawing, it stated that there was a 14-foot separation. This is our building permit from the building permit file.
All right, I'd like to see that when you have a chance.
What year is that from?
1936.
It's hand drawn.
Is that the only permit on file for this property?
Thank you. Sorry.
I believe there are other permits such as let me see. That's the only permit I have. I believe so. I believe that may be the only permit that we have for this residence. So there are reasons why the zoning code requires setback distance from the property line, as well as separation between buildings on a lot and limitations on a lot coverage. First of all, the requirement for setback is to afford some privacy among neighbors, and also to provide sufficient light and air circulations between properties, and also to control noise. So when you have essentially buildings that are built to property lines and it's livable space, that impacts adjoining properties. Second, lot coverage is to ensure that the lot is developed in a sensible and attractive manner. If you have a lot that is overbuilt, that is inconsistent with other lots that are not overbuilt. So you have inconsistency among neighborhood that could affect the attractiveness of the neighborhood. And the third item is the garage. The requirement of garage is to have available parking on site, off the street, and also to reserve street parking potentially for visitors to the area. So if a property or properties cannot provide the enclosed parking garage, then it would impact the street, and that street is further impacted when you have visitors to the area or emergency personnel. So those are the main reasons why certain zoning codes are in place. It's to encourage life and safety, to preserve the character of the neighborhood, to encourage attractive developments, and to protect adjoining developments and impacts to those to the residents. So based on what was stated in the staff report that was provided to you in your packet, and the information that I presented today, I would encourage the Planning Commission to sustain the zoning administrator's decision to deny this variance request. Thank you. And also, if I may add, Mr. Ron Williams from Neighborhood Services is here to answer any question you may have. He is the inspector in charge of this property.
Mr. Lee?
Yeah, I have a question in that, have you looked at this property, if you were to remove this structure, I looked at the documentation and whether, not knowingly, bought this property with the illegal addition. But my concern now is that if you were to remove the structure, the roof line and the wall structure, how will that affect? And what challenges do you have there? How is the electrical connection and everything else right now? That's attached to this addition. How is that going to be affected? And I guess the other question, I don't know if that will be directed to you or the people who's living there. You have two people living in this 3-bedroom residence. What is the third bedroom used for? What's the hardship for not having this third bedroom? Your opinion.
If I may answer your question, Commissioner Lee.
And you can address that question in rebuttal when you have 15 minutes and a couple seconds, or a few minutes.
Removing the illegal addition and covered patio would solve a number of issues. First of all, it would eliminate the lot coverage issue. And second, it would also eliminate the parking garage requirement, because essentially the applicant is not adding any new floor area. Our zoning code only requires parking when a property owner is proposing enlargement or adding floor areas to the house. So if that is to go away, then that garage, even though it's not meeting today's code, can remain as is.
I guess my question was not really, I understand all that you don't bring the house back to the code, but in the process of doing that, removing the structure.
It would be a big undertaking. If you look at the floor plan, there's a bathroom involved, which is attached to the garage. So that's a lot of work.
So by removing the structure, we may force them to actually build out the whole back of the house again to put it back into the original shape.
Correct. And landscape that area.
Any other questions? Or Mr. Foy?
Yeah, if I may, if you look at the floor plan, the bedroom which connects the back of the house to the garage, next to one room it has a closet, and then there is an opening for looks like a hallway, a doorway, and then a freestanding wall. So the wall of the addition closest to the house doesn't seem to contain any plumbing or, in the universe of removing rooms, this looks like a simpler one.
It looks like it's at a different elevation as well. It's like stepping down to the third bedroom there.
Right, and just from looking at the roof plan and looking at the photographs of the house, probably the roof was altered for this addition. It's likely that the back of the house probably pretty closely mirrored the front of the house, except for the front-facing gable where the bay window is.
We went over a case, I just remember, a few months ago, similar to this. It was off of Verdugo, and it had to do with the illegal addition that the person bought. And we were requiring to have a 2-car garage. Was that similar to this? Because I know we granted. You remember that?
Was that in the multifamily development? It was maybe 5 units.
I think it was close to it, but it was a single family.
I remember there was a series of condos where a woman...
No, it was just one single family. It was similar to this. There was an addition in the back. There was a bedroom. And it was illegal.
If you remember the case, please speak to it.
I know there was one a while ago. It was Milka Toledo was the case planner. And it was one where we had a difference of opinion, I think, even among staff. We had one staff member recommending approval and one staff member recommending denial, as I recall.
Yes.
And that was the case. It was a project where there was an illegal addition to the rear, and the question was, would they have to remove the illegal addition so they were able to use their two-car garage?
Right, and the other part, I don't think they were attached.
Correct.
They were not attached.
They were
Not attached to the garage.
They were not attached.
I don't think there was a lot coverage issue in that one as well.
No, there wasn't.
Was not.
It was under it was a semi-subterranean garage.
Mr. Lee?
Yeah, I have one more question for the staff. If, let's say, this garage was converted over to two-car garage, I'm looking at this here, turning radius here.
Not gonna make
Do
it.
they have a problem of qualifying that turning radius?
Commissioner Lee, yes, per today's code, that would be a problem. We would not approve that because the the building is in the way of the turning radius. However, that was approved originally that way, so we would not be able to ask them to modify that.
So even though the two-car garage is, so the original application had two-car garage already approved?
Yes.
As is, okay.
That would be considered legal non-conforming as well, that condition.
By original, I think you mean when the house was built.
Correct.
Okay.
I guess I would like to ask Neighborhood Services a couple of questions, if you wouldn't mind approaching. First off, your name, please.
Sure. My name is Ron Williams. I'm a co-compliance inspector with the City of Glendale Neighborhood Services.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And does anyone else have any other questions for him before I ask a few?
Not this
follow
time. Not
after.
this
All right,
time.
fair enough. All right, so we had testimony from the appellant that the reason this all came up is they gave Neighborhood Services a call because they had a problem with basically their neighbor's garage in their airspace.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
And so you came out and saw the situation and said, boy, you got more problems in your neighbor's garage. You got this, boom, bam, bam, bam. Thanks for calling. All right. First off, what's the situation, out of curiosity, with the neighbor's garage? I visited the site. The applicant was home, and I was able to enter and go into his backyard. Looks like it's, and we have a picture of it, looks like it's still imposing on his property.
Right. Apparently there was the neighbor had a corral, and the corral had a structure that was attached to the property at 239 Jesse. So the gentleman, the owner of 239 Jesse, asked me to come out and take a look at it, which I don't know who made the structure. So I cited the person who owned the corral, or that add-on, told him I had to remove that, and then the corral was eventually permitted. And so while I was there, I happened to notice all the other violations, or the violations at 239 Jesse.
But, but this guy's, you can't build over somebody else's property, and this guy apparently has. And
I don't
it's
know.
Still there.
Yeah, I don't know who built what it was a sheet of roofing paper that was attaching the two structures. And so I don't know who built the structure. The property owner, 239 Jesse, claimed that was the owner on the neighbor. So therefore, I was...
But the neighbor's roof, we have a picture. The neighbor's roof is clearly over the property line.
Right.
So why is that still in existence? You say it's been permitted. How can that stand?
Apparently, a permit was granted for that structure, and it was signed off. So therefore, I cleared my case for that.
Is this the situation you're talking about here?
Yeah, it is.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Clearly encroaches.
Boy, this, you know what? You're doing your job, but God help someone that calls the city. Something like this pops up and all hell breaks loose. We've got something that clearly, in my mind, was there for 27 years.
Sure.
So, and I understand you're doing your job. Any other questions at this time for Neighborhood Services? I guess not. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
You do? Go ahead.
Could you clarify for the commissioners and everyone else here the amount of permits that would typically be required when you would build an addition, including the electrical, and so why the health, safety, and welfare issue here is of utmost concern? What would be the typical permits that would be required that would protect both the occupants as well as the neighborhood? There was a
Permits
huge
would be-
fire up in Montrose, and, when a neighbor builds a house that isn't permitted and the electrical catches fire, somebody else's house may catch fire too. Could you
Correct.
please go through that so everyone here understands the reasons that we permit buildings?
So that they're built correctly and they're built to code. Regarding which permits is necessary, I believe that would be up to the Permit Services Department to answer that one correctly. What we do is we go out and if we do an inspection and I see something that's built, what I do before I cite the owners, I'll do a permit check. And if there's no current permits for that, then I would cite that property owner, instructing them to obtain a permit. Then I would send them over to the Permit Service Department, telling them that they have to obtain the permits. Then
Well,
once
that-
they obtain, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It sounds like you're talking about a permit. Aren't there multiple permits when they build the structure as far as the different crafts?
I believe they
trades?
need building permits as well as electrical permits.
What
maybe,
permits do you look for when you go out and do an inspection?
whatever permits are necessary to legalize that structure.
So you have a checklist or a...
Well, why, if, for instance, regarding 239 Jesse, there was some drywall without to the garage, add-ons to between the garage and the house. So what I would do is go to the permit pack, go through the permit pack, and if there's no permit showing that this was done without permits, then then all those work was done without permits, so therefore it was done illegally.
I think that gets around.
Commissioner Landrigan, if I may add to what Mr. Williams just stated, when a permit is required, whether it's building permit, mechanical, plumbing, or electrical permit, that essentially is ensures the property owner that he or she is entitled to an inspection, whether in the process of this structure being built or at the end, depending on the type of project. So it ensures an inspection from the building inspection office, and in that process, the city and the division make sure that it was built correctly and in a safe manner. That's the distinction.
I have to say that this is actually kind of a sidebar, because what we're talking about here is a variance case. If by some chance the variance is passed, he still has to go through the permit.
Right.
Correct.
That's still there regardless of what we're...
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Well, he'll have to get a permit one way or the other if it's
Right.
going to stay or...
Well, if it's going to go, he'll need a demo permit for something
Correct.
that doesn't exist. All right.
That leads
Okay.
me to a question then.
Please.
If that description, that scenario does happen,
Requiring a demo permit?
no, before that, if it's approved, the variance is approved, they still have to get permits.
Yes, sir.
Right.
So you get permits for what is currently built, and if that can't be done, then what happens?
Then they have to remove it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
I just
If it doesn't meet the building code, right.
They have to restore it back to its original condition, which a permit is not required, or a demo permit.
Zoning in place in 1983 compared to the zoning that's in place today. Do we know what the differences were in the code that may have created? If this had been done, let's say, the right way by the previous owner in 1983, and he had come in to get a building permit, what was code at that time as it relates to setbacks and so on for that area?
area coverage.
Exactly, setback and area coverage specifically.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Edith Fuentes, Planning Administrator. The code requirements would still be the same currently and back in 1983. Lot coverage will be the same, and so with setback and distance separation.
All right, thank you very much.
Car space going garage as well?
The parking requirements has been in place since 1920. The same thing up to the current time.
Yeah.
Anything else for neighborhood services? All right, thank you very much, sir.
But I do have, when we have the rebuttal, I want
For the appellant or
Yeah.
for staff?
to, appellate.
Oh, yeah, they're about to come up. And anything else for staff at this point? All right, the appellant has a rebuttal period, up to 15 minutes or more with our questions.
Thank you. Hayward Minas Messi again. I would like to go over some things that the staff brought up. First, as far as the home not being unique, I believe most of us can agree that once you live at a house for 27 years, that becomes pretty unique to you. It becomes your, it becomes your family. The house it's your home now. 27 years is a long time. We have to understand that the current residents did not build this addition themselves, and why should they be stuck with the hardships, especially when they didn't even know about any of this. They just bought the house in 1983, and they don't even know when the addition was built. We're not sure. We're assuming it was built in 83, but we're not even sure about that. The second one, staff said that there's only one permit on file. I believe there's more than a dozen permits on file with the city of Glendale, including one with the roofing, which I presented.
Go ahead and interrupt him on that if you'd like, Ms.
Thank you.
Landrigan.
All of the permits you've given to us have 233 Jesse. There are two different addresses, and unless they have the exact address, we do not consider them to be part of this determination.
You may not have noticed, but
But they all have the
permits are
wrong
for 233,
address on
not 239.
So they are not, as far as we're concerned, a valid permit for the discussion item here. So unless you have something different that has the correct address, please don't make reference to building permits for this site.
I apologize. Then I would advise to stick to the termite report was to 239. And
fine.
the appraisal of the Glendale Federal Bank is also for
Correct.
239. Also, staff stated that the property is overbuilt and may be inconsistent. Well, the floor area ratio we're talking about here is not such. It's not such an amount that's exceeding the requirement by a significant amount where it would be inconsistent. We are talking about 3.9%, I believe. It's 43.9 and it required 40%.
Can I see the appraisal?
Also, staff brought up an issue of the car garage being only a single one, an oversized single car garage. The residents only have one car parked at the property, and the driveway could easily fit 5 cars, and this would not affect the hardship of the neighborhood parking on the street. And as far as the electrical concerns, the concerns we're dealing with are the setbacks of the garage, and all of the electrical and the plumbing inside the addition are fine.
Well, actually, you're incorrect. You will have to get permits for
Yes,
everything.
we will get the permits for the
So
electrical
if there are
and the
no
plumbing.
permits, where the variance is that you will have to permit the whole thing,
The electrical and the plumbing.
everything,
Everything.
including the
Structure.
foundation, the structure, every bit of it.
Yes, speaking
But that
of,
means it may be ripped apart to all the walls, torn apart, so that can happen. That will have to happen. So I'm just saying that the permitting of this will have to be permitted. It's not permitted at the moment.
yes,
None of it is.
I understand the plumbing and the electrical and the stucco will be permitted. However, the hardship on removing the addition would mean to restructure the entire home, which would be a significant hardship on a 70-year-old man living in the residence.
Where is 233, Jesse? Is it adjacent to it?
Yes.
Next door? Can you show me which one it is on the sheet here? North or east or west?
It would be west of it.
Maybe you could address the question I raised earlier about your reasoning or justification behind having the third bedroom when you have two occupants living in the house?
The reasoning is very simple. As I stated before, if the current resident were the person who had the addition done, then I would expect an explanation from them of why do you need the third bedroom. But when they purchased the house in 1983 with the addition already there, I mean, they had nothing to do with that addition.
This is the other. So there's no compelling reason why you need the third bedroom.
Don't use it.
Yeah.
Are they using the third bedroom?
They're using the third bedroom. However, it's not as if they build it themselves. You understand?
Okay, just looking over the appraisal, because something triggered in my mind, because I recall a friend of mine who bought a property, who will remain unnamed, in their initial appraisal, they bring up things like unpermitted additions and things like that. And then the buyer has the decision of, well, I'm going to buy the house anyways. I understand it's not permitted. I might get in trouble later. Nobody will care. It doesn't matter. Whatever. I mean, that's part of the purchase process. In the appraisal, this, of course, is not the original purchase, then the appraisal of 97, and this is what appraisals do, so I'm guessing even back with the original purchase, but that's just a guess. Public records indicate the subject property having 1,266 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. Appraiser measured 1659. Inspection revealed 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. The rear bedroom and bathroom were additions. They conform to the additional structure and appear in good shape. However, there were no permits noted for the addition, although we'll include it in the value of the property. So in 97, the appraiser noted that you don't have any permits for this addition. And so I'm just, again, without having the records in front of me, as painful as it is, I'm afraid that when your clients bought the home, they knew it was unpermitted. You know, that would be a supposition on my part and a fear on my part that they knew.
I don't agree
And you
with you
can't
because
answer.
I don't agree with you on that because that's an assumption that they got.
Well, they clearly knew in 97.
They might have known in 97 because it's stated in the appraisal, but we don't know if the same company appraised it in 1983 when they purchased the home. So it's an assumption.
I emphasize it's a supposition on my part. I have no proof of that. It's just a supposition.
Thank you.
This does not pertain to anything. Well, what was the reason for your appraisal in 97?
I'm not sure.
Refi.
Finance.
Oh, refinance. Oh, okay, thank you.
Other thing, we may have actually interrupted you a little bit with our questions. Were you able to get out everything you wanted to do in the rebuttal period?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Are there further questions for the appellant? Oh, you have time. You should just come forward.
I'm not sure.
Well,
I don't know a lot about
we don't know if our questions are appropriate sometimes.
I
Go
work
ahead.
with adolescents for a living, so I don't get all this stuff. The appraisal in 1997, it is very unfortunate. I will not give an excuse other than the fact that I doubt they read it. To be honest, it was to refinance for my sister's wedding, and I doubt they even read what it said in it other than to get money. And I can't speak to that other than that's my opinion of knowing my parents. They don't tend to read everything. One quick question, you let me know if this is not the place to ask. It said somewhere along the ways, and I might be mistaken, that 2 car garages were required since 1920-something. And in my neighborhood, walking around, there are so many houses with single car garages. So I'm confused on why it would be okay for some people to have a little garage that...
Yeah, for properties that post-date 1920s, right? Is what
No,
you're asking.
I'm guessing that the pictures I have, I just took a bunch of pictures of places that I was like, okay, that's a really small garage. Mine seems really big. Why would it be okay for some people to have a single and other people to have a double if these laws were in state since 1920?
Ms. Fuentes, could you clarify that?
Yes,
Or someone else, but I'll...
Mr. Chair,
You
members of
seemed
the board.
eager, so...
Definitely. And I think Mr. Duong already mentioned that we have a lot of legal non-conforming. A lot of those properties, their requirements for a single car garage, they met that before, and then any other addition would trigger the 2-car garage. So he mentioned that we have legal non-conforming garages all over the city.
Well, I think where he's coming from, and let's clarify for everyone, is you indicated that the 2-car garage requirement goes back to the 20s.
The parking requirement goes back to the 20s.
Parking
but the specific 20 by 20 dimension, I would say they go back to like the 70s.
Okay. So, in other words, that garage was totally fine and remains fine because it's what they call non-conforming, but, I'm sorry, the phrase.
Legal non-conforming.
Legal non-conforming. Meaning it's okay as long as you don't put on additions on the house and, neighbors don't do. Nobody does anything to their property. It's fine the way it is. It wouldn't meet code today, but since it preceded the code, it's okay.
Okay.
That was one of the reasons I was asking what code was in 83, for
Right.
example.
That just stuck in my head, and I was like, if I don't ask them.
No, good
Good
clarification.
question.
Okay. I think that's, well, thank you guys for your time.
All right. Thank you very much.
Can I ask staff a question?
In just a moment, sure. Anything else for the appellant? Okay, we'll close that part of it. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Closing remarks from staff and questions for staff.
Thank you, Chairman Kane. Staff does not have any new information to add, except that the Planning Division recommends that you deny this variance.
All right, questions for staff, Ms. Landrigan?
This is R1 2H, right? So it's an equestrian overlay zoners.
Yes.
What does the equestrian overlay zone, so it does make it unique in some way, so it would be unique from the rest of the city, because certainly I can't keep a horse at my house, would fall off of the hillside. But nonetheless, my question is, what can you do within an equestrian zone that you can't do in the rest of the city?
Commissioner Landrigan and member of the Plan Commissions, that's a great question. The horse overlay zone would allow those properties with that designation to propose or construct such structures as corral, stables to house horses, and as well as fencing in the front yard setback. I don't remember a certain distance from the front, 5 feet from the front property line. Those are some of the main differences between an R1 District 2 in other parts of the city and an R1 District 2 with an H horse overlay zone. But even for those structures, there are requirements and regulation pertaining to them.
Could they be abut the property line?
No.
But the one behind this does, that corral does.
That's an unattached structure. The issue here is the addition.
All right.
The attachment.
Okay.
You were
They can,
right on, yep.
they might abut the property line, corrals and stables, if they're constructed of masonry or concrete and have no openings.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff?
Oh, does that, do corrals count toward the area coverage?
Yes. Because if it contains a solid roof.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions for staff? Did anything come to mind at this moment that you want to redirect to the applicant or appellant? All right. Seeing none, let's close the public hearing. We'll enter deliberations. Initial thoughts or comments? Who'd like to lead off? Who hasn't gone first for a while? Come on, step up.
Here, I'll go.
Oh, all right.
Well, this is obviously challenging, as what Mr. Duong mentioned. On one hand, we have a house that has had this unpermitted building there for a very long time. We don't exactly know if the owner purchased it like this or not, but we do know it's been there for a while. So it's challenging as far as finding out, person has bought a house. What do we do as far as, we definitely have the set rules of what we do, if it's unpermitted or not. And that's very straightforward, and we know what is legal and what's not legal. And I think that's very clear and that's very obvious. But the question is, of course, if something is built so long ago, and we don't have that anywhere, I don't believe, where we do make an exception for something like that. So that's the challenge. I still don't have my mind 100% made up. I would like to hear what my fellow commissioners have to say as well. And then I think I will be better at deciding this.
I'll go next. I, have no doubt that the owners, although in 1983 when they were purchasing the property, it might have stated probably a similar language in the in the appraisal about the addition. And sometimes, when we purchase a property, we don't read between lines or right down to the fine print. I, for one, is guilty of that. So, I just sign on the dotted line to purchase the house of those zillion documents. So I don't think this was intentionally, knowingly, bought, so this, and whether or not this was, 1983 is what the year that they purchased the property, but, this might have been there 50 years, 60 years, who knows. Now, they still have the burden of going through the permit process and all that, but I find it, kind of unique in that when anything is been there for over 30 years, as far as we know, for the record, 27, maybe 50. Then it does become kind of unique, situation. It's unfortunate that when the inspector goes out and discovers this, anomaly, and now it becomes a big issue. When these people have been living there for, over, for close to 30 years. Yes, I know what the code says, and if these owners were the ones who put the addition there without the permit, knowingly done this, definitely there's no debate here. I've gone the way to remove the existing structure, whether it causes hardship or not. Reviewing the drawings, removing of this the structures from the existing property is not going to be that difficult, because it just say there's no structural anything that imposes structural difficulties. But however, whether you go through the removal or you go through the permitting process, there would be some economic hardship involved with this project. As far as I'm concerned, I'm kind of leaning towards granting the existing structure.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Ms. Landrigan?
I concur with the zoning administrator. I don't think the findings can be made. I don't think it's an exceptional situation. Economic hardship is not a consideration. We have the termite report that says this happened in 1983. However, and I'm glad you found that. I looked through the report to see if I could see if there was any record of permitted buildings or not. So I read very carefully things before I sign them, especially when I'm signing away something so as important as on a mortgage sheet of paper or even refinancing. So I'm not saying that the applicant is disingenuous. I'm just saying that not paying attention is not sufficient. I do have a concern that it's sat there for 27 years before somebody brought this to our attention. I think that's interesting, but most of the time these things happen because we're not diligent or we don't call on our neighbors when these things happen. So, but to me, the fact is that this site can legally be designed to meet the intent of the code and still serve the purpose of what our applicants want. So I would have to support the zoning commissioner's finding because I can't see any of the findings being met, and economic hardship is not one of them, and not reading your mortgage is not one of them either. So it is in violation of the code. If it's in violation of our universal building codes, we tear it down. I think that we have to respect all of our codes, including our zoning codes, as well as our building codes. They deal with other aesthetic elements of air and health and consistency. I would have a very hard time supporting deviating from that unless there were significant findings, and I can't find them.
Okay. Mr. Sheets.
Okay, none of these are easy. Personally, for me, this issue is very frustrating, based on just some personal experiences I have in my neighborhood. First, I'll start out by saying I can't make the findings. I think the zoning administrator was right. But that's looking at it from a zoning aspect. It's not a personal issue. I think probably Mr. Wilderson and his family are very sorry that they brought up the issue about the neighbor's overhang at this point in time. I believe this sets a precedent. I believe others will want to do these kinds of things, and many have done them already in this city. Another issue, just like the complaint that was made, if we approve this and it moved forward, somebody else would want to improve that add-on, and there would be issues about what they could do to improve it and how they could improve it, because it's not conforming. This is a bigger issue in our city than the city realizes. I have it up there in my mind as almost as high as the parking issue. And I understand what's happened. I understand the evolution of the city. I understand why people do what they did, do to their houses to improve them. And I think it was done for the right reason. And I feel sorry for the appellant having bought the house this way. But I need to move further and point out that not to point blame, but to point weaknesses in the city processes. I feel the enforcement process that we have is too broad and too weak, and it's going to cause these kinds of things to continue to happen, because I know of 5 or 6 in my neighborhood that have occurred in the past 2 years. And 5 years from now, because this started in 2005, somebody will be sitting here dealing with those issues. But they've been reported. But the enforcement process, for whatever reason. And I think what we're doing here tonight and other instances that we've had need to be looked at, and then the whole process needs to be really refined and defined as to what we're trying to do. Because it's a crime to take something away from a house that was put in there 30 years ago. That's not a crime, technically, but it's just sad. I feel the process misleads people, because there are people today, and will happen in the future, who can continue to do add-ons because they think it's okay. They think nothing happens. The reality is zoning applies to all, current and future. And as harsh as it may sound, we need to make a decision. We either want to stop this or we don't. to stop it, in my mind, you need to draw a line and say, here's what we're going to do. Sadly, the process we have today doesn't do that, so it's going to make these issues uncomfortable and difficult. And so that's enough said. At this point in time, I support the denial from the zoning administrator. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. Well, you know, there's nothing like a site visit. Obviously, I think I mentioned earlier I'd been there. I did happen to talk with the elderly gentleman that resides in the home. Not really much in the way of discussion other than he allowed me to get into the backyard so I could see it from that perspective. I saw the picture of I saw the actual situation as far as the neighborhood's or the neighbor's roof and so on. This is just a crying shame that, well, first off, it's an illegal addition. It shouldn't have been constructed. It's not permitted. The fear there, as I believe Ms. Landegren was kind of pointing out, is when you don't have things permitted, you don't know if it's safe. Okay? So for 27 years, there's been something risky going on there. Now, I am more than willing to at least accept, especially after 27 years, that that when these folks bought it, they may not really have realized that they had an illegal addition on their hand. I would hope that, and this is kind of a message to real estate professionals, is when you have a buyer and you're seeing these things in the appraisal report, that's leverage for your buyer in talking with the people they're buying it from. You know, they need to be fully versed that hey, you're getting this, you have illegal additions, you need to recognize that there could be problems coming ahead for you. Don't know what happened in 1983, just know our situation today. After walking the property, and maybe some of it's subjective because I certainly did talk to the property owner, and he's an elderly guy, and I'm looking at something that isn't hurting the neighborhood per se, that's been in place for 27 years. I'm looking at a house that's in great shape. The upkeep, everything about it is solid. Mind you, we don't know what the problems are behind the drywall. We don't know if they use duct tape to secure the electrical. We don't know any of these things because it's unpermitted. But in terms of what's going on with that property, I would dearly love to be able to make the findings to allow it to stay in place. It would be wonderful if we could do it. Extremely difficult. By myself, I don't know how I could make the findings. The testimony and the arguments that we've heard from the appellant, just don't carry the day in terms of what we have to do. Everything that was said was true there, but they belie more emotional arguments than they do in terms of the actual findings we have to make. It's a difficult position to be in. At one point, one of the reasons I asked about the 5-foot eave to eave, geez, if we could create a 2-inch separation, we're done. Do something goofy and walk away from it. I do find something a little unusual that we could try to build around, in that, if I'm correct, the neighboring property owner against the garage is the same owner as this property. Is that correct?
No.
It's the other way?
The other way.
The other. So I'm wrong on that.
Same thing.
Then I'm wrong on that. Between the 3s and the 9s. Okay. Well, that goes out the window.
That's what I asked.
So I would love to be able to make the findings, but I can't come up with them. And staff hasn't been any help, which I wouldn't expect them to, because they don't think the findings can be made either. But I'm grasping at straws. I'd like to say, look, it's been in place 27 years, not hurting the neighborhood. Get the permits, get it inspected, make sure it's safe, and walk away. I don't have a problem with the fact that it's slightly over the floor area ratio. I mean, based on the size of the lot, it's 21 square feet over the floor area ratio. I don't find that objectionable. And it's just kind of, unfortunately, it's a chain of events that gets kind of weird, that as soon as you attach something to the garage, all these other things kick into place. Everything was fine until that darn addition attached to the garage. I'm afraid, well, a couple things on that. Well, actually, pretty much everything goes away, even if they peel the addition back and just create an opening of, let's say, 6 feet between the garage, the bedroom no longer really becomes a bedroom, but whatever. I guess the other things go away anyways, as far as the garage and so on. It's more of a random thought, I apologize.
Can you qualify the addition as a corral?
That, no. Now you're thinking outside the box. I'm admiring that.
Why not?
All right. So where I'm at is I would dearly love to make the findings, but I can't find the path. And if any of my fellow commissioners can help me in that regard, I would love to embrace overruling the zoning administrator, but I can't get there right now.
What is the technical difficulty of this thing I just suggested? Since it's in the whole zone.
Were you saying something, Mr. Foy? I overlooked your...
Yeah, I mean, with all due respect to all the parties involved here, a lot of these cases do have arguments for and against. And although I agree with staff's recommendation, it can be seen two ways. One thing you could consider is that a 5,094 square foot lot area is relatively small for the city. It's certainly below the minimum size required for new lots in this zone. There are a lot of lots on that same block of the same size, but if you look even at the vicinity map in your packet, you can see that these couple of blocks have relatively small lots, and nearby there are lots of a more standard size. Those things could possibly be used to justify decreased setbacks and/or extra lot coverage.
As a unique situation for the city, because of being the small lot, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, let's broach this because discussion is good, and we already talked earlier in our. By the way, public hearing's open since we're talking to staff. We broached it earlier, where there are disagreements, there are different viewpoints on the part of staff. All we've seen, and it's a very well-structured, logical argument, all we have seen is the reasons not to approve it. You brought up one potential that might be considered. Were there other thoughts on the part of staff? Were anybody else weighing in with other potential arguments that could be used to make the findings that you're aware of, Mr. Foy?
No, I wasn't aware of that. I was just...
That was one that came to mind. Right. Being an advocate for alternate ideas.
And there's no such thing as a grandfather clause or anything like that.
No, and even if the guy's a grandfather. Ms. Landergan.
And it's only one of the four findings. That's really the hardest part, is if you could make a finding that this is a smaller lot than average in the city of Glendale. That might be a case to make, but I think the other three findings you can't make, so that makes it...
Yeah, I mean, my gut is, my gut is, quote unquote, the right thing to do would be to leave it. But when you look at the findings and you look at the code and you look at what we're charged to do, in spite of what my gut says, I think we have to follow the rules of law, if you will. Any other thoughts from commissioners in terms of being able to make the findings?
I'll just take a shot at one point of clarity from the staff. The main impetus regarding all of this, in my mind, is or if I'm reading this correctly, is the attachment. Roofs are attaching the house to the garage. If that structure did not touch the garage, what are the standards? It has to be 5 foot. That's okay, and I wasn't sure of the footage on that.
And also, Commissioner Sheets, if if the structures are detached, meaning in this case a portion of it would have to be removed, then it would possibly correct the lot coverage issue as well.
Yes.
Exactly.
But the parking is still a problem because you still have an addition there, whether it's reduced or not. It's still an enlargement of the
Yeah, but
existing
that,
house.
I would think that that would probably be an easy one to work through.
I mean,
You know,
part of
without knowing particulars, I think there'd be
And-
room to work.
And also, commissioners, I neglected to mention this. Even if the planning commission votes to overturn the zoning administrator's decision, this project would still be subject to our design review process.
Oh, design review as well, huh?
I think in my mind,
I think one other finding maybe I would do for the fourth one is, I mean, one unique exception is that he has another property in his airspace. And for the fourth finding, it's talking about not affecting the other, being too close to the property lines. And unique to his property, he has a roof that's coming to his airspace.
He butts up against an accessory structure on the adjacent property, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that may be another finding, because that would be unique to his property. I mean, that's another finding, but I mean, I'm not sure if we can make that as an exception or not, as a fourth finding, since he has another neighbor.
We're grasping at straws.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad you bring it up.
Yeah. So that could be a possibility too.
I think we're stretching it.
Yeah.
And I guess my fear sitting here is next week we're going to have another one. The next week we're going to have another one. And I'm just trying to find a line that we travel for the right reasons with the right logic. And so just, I agree, I want to make the findings, I want to make it work, but it's just not there for me.
All right, unless there's further discussion, I'll ask for a motion. I would ask Ms. Landrigan or Mr. Sheets to make the motion, please,
Looking for our motion.
to sustain. That's actually good.
I've got it.
Did you find one?
I found it. I move that upon review and consideration of all materials and exhibits of current record relative to standards variance case number PVAR 2009-025, located at 239 Jesse Avenue, and after having conducted an appeal hearing on said matter, that the Planning Commission hereby sustains the zoning administrator's decision and denies said standards variance case number PVR 2009-025 in accord with the findings set forth in the decision letter of January 25th, 2010.
We have a motion, Searchin for second.
I second.
Motion, support, call roll, please.
Commissioner Landrigan,
Aye.
Commissioner Lee,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheets,
Aye.
Commissioner Yesayan,
Aye.
and Chair Kane.
And a vote to 5-0, the Planning Commission has sustained the zoning administrator's denial of standards variance case PVAR 2009-025. Under the provisions of Chapter 2.8 of the Glendale Municipal Code, any person affected by the decision of the Commission has the right to appeal said determination to the City Council if it is believed that the decision is in error or that procedural errors have occurred, or if there is substantial new evidence which could not have reasonably been presented at the hearing. An appeal must be filed within 15 days following the actual date of such action. Information regarding appeals and appeal forms will be provided upon request and must be filed in Building and Safety Division, 633 East Broadway, Room 101, together with the required filing fee for such an appeal. The Building and Safety Division telephone number is 818-548-3200. All right, we're going to be moving on to the next case. I will allow it. Just come before I introduce the next case. We're done with the matter. Do you have a question regarding procedure or process?
Yes.
then I would just ask that you sidebar with a member of the planning commission, or planning staff, okay?
I just had a question about what you said.
For legal purposes and proper process, talk to a planning person as opposed to us right now, okay? We really can't address you anymore in terms of what we've done, but talk to the planning person, okay?
It's not your decision. I thought I heard you say the public hearing was open.
No, we've made our decision and we've voted. You really need to talk to planning staff now, sir. Okay. We're going to move on to agenda item 7A. It's a general plan amendment, case PGP 2010-002. It's a change of zone case PZON 2010-002. It's a vacant parcel in Sussex Court described as Lot 21, Block 5 of Tract 9328. It's APN 5660-011-034. The applicant is Nadam Hydir, 7280 Hillside Avenue, number 406 in Los Angeles. It is a request to change the zoning of a vacant lot from SR Special Recreation to R1R Restricted Residential Zone, Floor Area Ratio District 2, and to change the general plan land use element designation from recreational open space to low-density residential. The environmental recommendation is that the Community Planning Department, having conducted an initial study, PEIF 2008-045, has prepared a mitigated negative declaration for the project. The recommendation is that the Planning Commission adopt the mitigated negative declaration and recommend approval of the zone change and general plan amendment to the City Council. Staff is represented by Brad Collin. Could we have an overview, please? I'm sorry? Oh. Thank you. Mr. Collin.
As mentioned, zone SR. Overall, 2022 the proposed site.
Brad, your mic is off.
Just push the button.
Sorry. As well as a section drawing underneath the site plan that shows the existing storm drain or drain that goes through the subject property. It's at the top of the hill. I can show you.
I see it just on the map.
Oh, okay. As mentioned, this subject property is zoned SR, which is considered a special recreation zone. The applicant is proposing to change the zoning on Lot 21 to R1R to be consistent with the surrounding lots. In conjunction with the zone change, the general plan land use map would be amended from recreation open space to low-density residential to be consistent with the zone change. Staff would like to mention that the applicant and owner has worked real closely with the city's engineering department as well as the city arborist. There are several oak trees and other indigenous trees on the subject property, and the driveway and retaining walls that are being proposed in conjunction with the driveway for the city's engineering department will have no effect on the existing drain that goes through the subject property. In fact, the owner is being required to record a covenant and agreement with the city that will allow the driveway to go over the drain, to require protection of the existing indigenous trees on the property, as well as to maintain the lot for the fire department brush clearance requirements. The drain was originally put in by the neighbor, Mr. Victor Malling, as part of the construction of his house, and the drain comes in at the top of the property, goes through it underground, and comes out and connects to the city storm drain at the street. As it relates to the trees on the subject property, as I mentioned, the applicant and owner has worked in detail with the city arborist from the beginning of the project, and I've also left an arborist report as well as mitigation measures from the city arborist for you to take a look at. But the city arborist is comfortable in that the proposed driveway will not have any impacts on the existing indigenous trees on the property, and they have proposed mitigation measures to protect these trees during the construction process. Staff believes that the R1R zoning for the site is appropriate and that the request should be approved. The site is to be used, as mentioned, for driveway purposes, which would provide access to the proposed house on Lot 22. The change in zoning to R1R will be consistent with the other lots in the area. On the city's zoning map, Lot 21 is labeled as a park with a bridle trail, but there's no evidence that it was ever used as such. The subject lot will be combined with Lot 22 and will be maintained by the applicant. The zone change will be also conditioned so there will not be any structures built on the lot, and a covenant will be placed on the property prior to the zone change taking effect. In addition, the applicant has applied for a conditional use permit to build a single-family house on the lot, which is Lot 22, where the lot exceeds 50% of the average current slope and a lot width being less than 80 feet wide. The applicant has also applied for 3 variances for the driveway. The first is a driveway slope exceeding that allowed. Second, the driveway being located on a property other than the subject lot. And the third is there are retaining walls that are being proposed to be over height. And these will be heard by a planning hearing officer at a later date. The subject applications will go forward for the zone change and the general plan amendment to the City Council for their review. As mentioned, initial study has been prepared by staff and proposed mitigated negative declaration has been proposed in compliance with the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act. The mitigations that are contained within would take effect only if the zone change were approved to R1R. If the City Council pursues an alternative rezoning concept, a new environmental document would need to be prepared. That concludes staff's presentation. The property owner as well as the project architect are in the office or in the audience, and I'm available for any questions.
Questions for staff at this moment? So just to emphasize, the SR, Special Recreation Zone, Lot 21, is a little wedge of special recreation. There's nothing around it. It's not like this would be a continuation of, as you say, a bridle trail or anything like this. Right now, if it was a bridle trail, it's literally Lot 21.
And if anything, it would have gone across the top of it, which is more of a flat portion, but there's no indication of
it's a heck of
like that
it's a heck of a bridle trail. All right. Okay, and again, so everything else around it is R1R, correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you very much. Nothing else for staff at this time? All right, we'll move on to the applicant's presentation. I have, interestingly, 2 people in the audience and 3 cards. If you want to trade off so that she can speak, she's certainly entitled to whatever works for you. You have 15 minutes, however you want to handle it, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. My name is Edward Hagobian, and I'm the architect of this project. My address is 220 South Kenwood, Suite 210, Glendale 91205. When we started to design this project, as you can see in the site plan, there are a lot of oak trees there, and basically the biggest oak tree is right in front of the property. Where I have a tree report. I don't know if you have a copy of it.
Of what?
I'd like to pass this tree report from our arborist.
We have a summary. Is that your only copy of the report?
No, I
can
can
hand it
leave-
to us.
I-
If you hand it to us, we'll never. We had this.
You can keep it because we have other
It's
copies.
just tree report. If
Anyway.
you'd like to present it, feel free.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure you didn't lose your only copy.
So as you can see,
It was laying on the desk when you sat down.
usually in this kind of cases, the main issue is the garage and driveway and entry to the house. With the
You know what?
huge oak tree that we have in front of the property, it totally blocks the possibility of designing the driveway, not only because of the tree, but also because of the steepness of the slope. As you know, the retaining walls has a limit of 5 feet height, and the number of the retaining walls, and then it comes the excavation issue, all kinds of problems we had to enter, to drive into the property. So because of that, the owner purchased that lot number 21, and then we have an easement from the other lot from the owner to be able to drive through his lot so that we can avoid all these oak trees. And even though that still is not that easy to climb up to the top of the hill, but if we can get the variance approved for 25% maximum slope, then we'll be able to drive through these two neighboring lots to enter to our property. The drainage issue, the owner hired an engineer and he studied the drainage, existing drainage, and we have a plan here which I would like to hand it to you so you can use it for reference. The drainage is lower than the driveway, so they do not interfere to each other. That's all I can think of. Basic issues that why we choose this route to try to have a zone change and some other variances, conditional use permits, so that we can make that lot buildable. Otherwise, that lot will not be. We will not be able to design.
All right.
That's all I can say. That's all I can remember about this project. I know it's a difficult project, but hopefully it will be doable.
What questions for the appellant, Ms. Landrigan?
And I would look at the pipe. The lower portion retaining 5 feet. So it goes down 5 feet. I'm sorry. You have on the grading plan that I have here in front of me, retaining walls that are 5 feet tall. And so that means you're cutting into the ground 5 feet. The pipe runs through there. What is the typical depth of this pipe? And if you're going to put in...
Well, I don't have the numbers, how deep is that, but that plans will show that it's prepared by the civil engineer. That shows that clearly that drainage and the pipe is well below the level of the driveway that we'll have.
But,
by the way,
excuse me 1 second, sir. Retaining walls have footings that exceed the depth of the finished grade. And I have a concern. I mean, I'm not opposed to this. I'm just concerned about, that is a big concern that I have, that this pipe is there.
I asked the same question from the engineer, and he said he has shown in the plans that even if we include the foundations, we still are not encroaching into the space of that drainage. And the height of the retaining wall is, it varies. In some locations it's a cut, in some locations it's a raised driveway, because we want to reach to the pad on top of this property. So with the maximum slope of the driveway we have, in some locations we are above the natural grade. However, this is an issue that we have to go through the process of plan check with the engineering department to make sure that we will not damage the existing drainage. It's my assumption, personal, that just in case, if it happens, then we'll repair or we'll go deeper on that drainage to avoid the foundations.
Thanks. Thank you.
I think staff said it earlier, there's still going to be CUPs and some other variances coming up eventually for review, right?
CUP is because of the slope. The variance is because of the slope of the driveway that exceeds the limit of 20%. If you remember, in the past, we had that 25% allowed, not anymore.
Just to be clear, is lot 20 also owned by the applicant as well? Where the easement, there's an easement
Yes.
that's owned by the applicant, the 3 lots.
No, the third lot is not the owner. He has an easement permit from the
From
neighbor.
the private owner,
Yes.
that lot? Okay.
That's actually a question I had. All right. Any questions at this moment for the appellant? Anything else you'd like to share with us, sir?
Are we appellant?
I'm sorry, not the appellant, the applicant. Sorry.
Applicant.
Thank you for correcting me.
Not yet.
Thank you for that. All right. Would you like to add anything? You're part of the presentation. That you've sat here so nicely for the last couple
and
hours.
the Planning Commissioner member, at least I want to introduce myself and give you a little bit of a story where I am and how I ended up here. I work for the Walt Disney Company. I'm the CFO of one of the cable channel, ABC Family. I don't know if anyone watched it. And we have a 1.5-year-old kid, and never before in my life that I started thinking about where we're going to build a house for our family. My wife has been living in Glendale for the last, 15 years, and given where my work is and given what Disney's expansion plan is within the city of Glendale, this was the city that we wanted to build our home. And when I saw this property, which is about almost 2.5 years ago, I absolutely loved it. And the thing that I loved, those were the things that was challenging, and especially the tree. So I have worked with the city of Glendale, starting from Teresa Prusovich and Anne Marie Sheed, from day one, just to figure out what can I do to preserve this tree, and I don't have to disturb the ecosystem, because for me it's very important. I quite value it. And in this 2.5-year process, I've changed my design at least twice to accommodate that tree. But we finally came to the conclusion that if you want to create the driveway through my property, you can't save that tree. So hence, I reached out to Steve Zern's office. He recommended Mike Whitaker, who has been very extremely helpful to me. He introduced me to Chris Sansoni, Mike Matthias, and the entire staff have been actually helping me to navigate this process. What can I do to make this as environmentally friendly as possible? And through their suggestion was, why don't you look into this process of creating a driveway through this park, or the Bridal Park area, which has a natural slope. It is environmental friendly. You don't have to do much grading. And I reached out to the homeowners association. They were the language that they use, that they won't support it, but they won't oppose it. So I have a letter of not opposing.
A neutral letter, okay.
And I went out and solicited opinion from all my surrounding neighbors as to what they think. And overwhelmingly, everyone suggested, this is the right thing to do. But however, at that point, I didn't own the land. So it was just a miracle that I founded the owner's grandnephew and finally bought the land. However, I am at the last junction that now I found out that it's, the zone is different, so I have to change the zone. And hence, I'm here to go through the last bit of that process, that if I can change, or if you guys agree that we can do it, then I would be able to build my own. And if you have any other questions, I will ask. Yes, I have been aware of it for the last 3 years. This is one of the 3 hearings that I'm going to have, or if not more.
It's a lovely exercise in patience you're working through.
I am meditating every day.
All right. Any specific questions for the appellant? Applicant, thank you. All right. At this point, we'll move on and ask staff if they have any further comments from what they first said.
Just a couple things that, as the owner had mentioned, staff did receive 2 letters of support, one from not a letter, but a phone call of support from a neighbor behind on Buckingham, and the neighbor just next door on the other side, Mr. On, came into the office and took a look at the plans and was also supportive of what was being proposed. So he's a property just next door as you're coming around the cul-de-sac. I believe it's lot 23, if I remember correctly. But as mentioned before, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the zone change and general plan amendment to the City Council, and also recommending certification and adoption of mitigated negative declaration and the adoption of the ordinances. And
Ms. Landrigan?
basically it.
Mr. Collin, I do have a question for you. I read the mitigated neg deck, and I also read the background analysis, and on page 3, the first one says, during all phases of construction, the subject stream area. Am I correct? The road is being built in the subject stream area. Where is
What do you mean the subject stream?
Well, I'm asking you, because it says it in here.
Okay, you said page 3. Page 3, let's
Page
cite the...
3 of the...
Of the mitigation
Under
measures?
what item number, or... Oh, see, I'm on
The
page 3.
stream is above the property.
Page 3 of the neg.
Of the neg deck.
It's the first, number 1 of the mitigation measures.
Uh-huh.
It basically says the following mitigation measures shall apply to the project. Number 1 states that during all phases of construction, the subject stream area.
Where is
Subject
that?
stream area is above and beyond the subject
Before the
property.
drainage pipe.
I'm sorry?
Is it before the drainage?
Can you show me where it is?
I'll be glad to show you.
What item is he reading? Where? Show me.
Drainage, I don't know if you can see from here. The pipe comes out about here.
What's page 2?
From staff's observation, it appeared that there was a stream that kind of came into this area, and then,
Yeah, it goes inside.
so it was on a separate property just beyond.
It'll go under the road.
Okay.
So that's what staff was referring to in that section, was to provide mitigation measures to protect that area during the construction process. That was the reason for the fencing and other requirements.
I could swear there's a house right here. Is that in?
There is.
There is?
This is the gentleman that owns.
Well, I was totally confused. I was
This
looking all
property
over
is where
this
the
property
driveway's
for
coming
that
over.
stream.
So this is an old.
I saw that erosion right at the base. and I said,
I thought that was
where's
the
that coming
stream.
from?
Oh, yeah. That's what I was trying to figure out what I was looking at today.
We've all proven that we've
Old
come to
picture.
the site.
Yeah.
There's a house here.
So this is considered the stream there. Because that would be the stream signature area.
Right. And it's beyond the property.
Right.
It is a really nice stream hike. Want to keep walking on that?
Now with dress shoes, it's not.
Yeah, I know. I was going back 3 steps for every 2.
Well, then, if that's the case, I think it's very misleading, this mitigation requirement. Because, in essence, the stream signature goes from where the stream begins all the way to where the stream ends, and on that signature, that would be at the cul-de-sac. So you would not be able to develop the road if you followed this mitigation requirement. Because
Going into the
road
cities.
is in the stream area.
The stream doesn't go out onto the property.
Sure it does. The stream doesn't stop. It still has...
It goes underground to the storm drain.
All right, but it's still part of the stream area, so it needs to indicate somewhere else that it needs to be the off-site stream area, as opposed to
I'm just
Stream in
really
the pipe.
puzzled by
where I got
your
this.
document versus my document.
Part of the staff report, page
Mine's part
3.
of the staff report,
Okay.
page 3.
Because I have the formal mitigated.
Ah,
You're looking at the
Different.
the staff report, page 3. Sorry.
No problem. It's just different than what the actual formal document is showing.
Not the same as two and then
I think it's not touching the stream because the drainage pipe is there and the road's being constructed over the drainage pipe, right? It's not touching the stream, which is behind the drainage pipe. But I think it's accurate.
Well, I would just note that even though this is in the staff report, it's not part of the actual proposed mitigated negative deck. They've changed that wording a little bit.
Well,
It should be the
Oh, I
same.
think it is. Maybe it's the same. Hang on.
It should be the same.
The type and everything is different, so let's see. Maybe it is identical.
It's the same.
Yeah, it was just the font size that
Okay.
threw me off.
Did we talk about the reason why this was a SR zone before, previously, or originally?
Mr. Foy, any idea?
My understanding, and maybe Ms. Stotler can clarify, but there were several lots throughout the city, especially in the hillside areas, that were just kind of sold off and basically were not developable because of the lot size and were created as SR zones to make it into park area. But maybe Laura can.
Yeah, I don't know this lot in particular, but I know that there are developments in a lot of the canyon areas. It was real popular at one time to include bridle trails in and among the developments, sort of like you see over in Silver Lake where they have the stairwells all over the place. It was at that time when it was popular in Glendale too. They left these open areas. They thought, okay, maybe someday they'll be developed as hiking trails or bridle trails. And
Yeah, but they don't connect to anything.
They don't connect to
Next to a
anything.
private.
They were never developed. A lot of times the subdivision lay dormant for a long time before anybody actually built it, and they never bothered to build those trails. They fell out of popularity, and once in a while the city will pick them up because a lot of times they are used as drainage areas. But for the most part, we still have them dotted throughout the city. All of them that the city was aware of, we made SR zone, special recreation. And so I know this has come up a couple of times. We do have people that occasionally purchase them to add to their yards, and maybe Tim has more information about it too.
No, I will only add that we did discuss this issue with the Parks Department, and they are fully supportive of dropping the SR zoning.
that was going to be my question. It has to go through the Parks and Recreation Commission, or
No, we did run it by the,
just taking footage away from the
Department staff.
recreation element. I just wondered if there was
I think that's a valid question.
it takes footage away from the recreation element as far as parkland, the existing parkland, so I just wondered if they need to
yeah,
party to this.
I don't know that areas that are simply zoned SR were included as parkland in that. I'd have to check.
Worth a
But
check.
it might just be actually developed parkland.
I mean, it doesn't change what we do here, but it may be a requirement, I don't know.
That's a good point, we'll
Good
check.
observation. Best one of the day so far.
One other question, the negative deck is for what reason?
It's actually serving several purposes. It's serving the purpose to address the potential impacts from changing the zone from SR to the single-family zone. In addition, it's also reflecting the variance and the conditional use permit that are also being processed at a later date.
So that's not, as far as what we're doing here today, this is above and beyond that.
It's reflective of the zone change and the general plan amendment, which will be forwarded on to the city council.
Okay.
If I may add, I also, if it was parkland and it's being changed and it had oaks on it, then it's a change of use, and any change of use is more than a initial study or just a neg deck.
I guess where I'm going with that, if our agenda item says we're here to discuss and adopt the property and make the change, the zone change, I didn't read in there that it says we will, at least we didn't have any information about the structure, about the house, and you have the variances, so I...
No, that's not related.
It makes, but that's what's in the negative deck.
Right.
So,
Instead of doing 3 separate ones,
I understand the reason, I just didn't know that's what we were doing, so... I didn't have any data discussing those items, so I wasn't prepared to decide whether they're valid or not, so... Maybe I'm off base, but... The negative decks seem to go beyond what our charge was. Does anybody else feel that, or am I just pushing?
I think it's a part of our charge if we're going to recommend a zone change of an SR zone. To me, that's how I see it.
About the house and the garage and the footage and the...
Well, if it's going to be lot tied...
there'll be a lot time. There'll also be a covenant and agreement for the Lot 21.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions for staff at this time? Okay, the applicant has rebuttal time if they have anything they want to rebut or critique. All right, seeing nothing, I'm going to close the public, well, anything else for staff? Any questions on the part of the commission for staff or the applicant?
I have one
Okay.
more question.
Sure.
I mean, this is just a general question. When private roads like this are built, is there clearance and things that are required for fire safety and fire engines to be able to, or fire cars to be able to go up? Is that required for a private road like this?
You mean for a driveway?
For a driveway?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I guess this is a driveway.
The answer is yes, and the fire department is part of the process of the review of this, and then the applicant will have to meet all the requirements that they will have in terms of whether the house needs to be sprinklered, whether there's certain access points, fire hydrants, stuff like that, depending on what the fire department feels is necessary based off the scope of the project.
Right. Okay.
Depending, they may weigh in and have big objections, for example, on the drive slope.
Yeah.
If they decide they're going to actually access the house via the drive.
They're going to take a look at. Okay.
Anything else for staff or the applicant? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Ms. Landergan?
I'll start.
Go ahead.
I think it's fairly creative, the way that the trees were honored. I think it's a very good example of site planning. I'd love to see this where the topography is addressed and the site is dealt with as part of the design. And purchasing this piece of land so that would happen. The only concern I have is that there may be some conflicts, but I guess if you break the pipe, you'll fix it. So it's not my concern. You showed us the engineering. I do think that it's a very nice solution, kind of elegant, and I commend you for it.
All right. And any other comments from commissioners? Your mic. When I heard the phone ring, I knew what you were doing.
You have to take his button away. That's it.
I was saying that the owner went through all the necessary steps, and also he was very patient working with the city to preserve the ecosystem of the property, and went through all the like I said, right steps and purchasing the property next to it to make this project work, and I commend you for that. And hopefully, this project becomes your dream house, and for your family to dwell on. So I'm for this project.
I'll just concur. I think it's a beautiful project. I look forward to seeing it completed. I would suggest there's continued intense meditation in your future.
Medication?
True. That also. But I'm in support of this also.
Me too, and I will move it if
Just a
there's no
moment.
more comments.
Other than I'm in favor of the project as well. Anytime we are going to change something from, recreation space to a residential use, and we'd all step back. But given the specifics of this case, the size of the lot, the location, the fact there's nothing else around it, it seems clear that this is a good decision to allow the zone change. And you were about to make that motion.
One comment before you make the motion. Does a resolution for your mitigated negative deck become part of your motion?
Let's handle them separately. So start with the mitigated negative deck, please.
Is there? So I move to adopt the resolution adopting the mitigated negative declaration. Do I have to read the whole?
Just say as prepared by
As
staff.
prepared by staff. And I also move that. Do we vote on that and then we vote?
Let's just take the one out of the way, and then we'll go to the other motion.
Okay.
So, okay.
Second.
Okay.
We have motion, support, call roll on adopting, or I guess, do we adopt or recognize?
Commissioner Landrigan.
Adopting a mitigation.
Very much.
Aye.
Commissioner Lee.
Yes?
Commissioner Sheets.
Aye.
Commissioner Yasayan.
Aye.
And Chair Kane.
Aye, and a vote of 5-0. The Planning Commission has adopted the mitigated negative declaration for PEIF 2008-045, and we can move on.
Okay, so I move that upon review and consideration of all materials and exhibits of current record relative to general plan amendment case number PGP 2010-002 and change of zone case number PZON 2010-002 located at Lot 21, Block 5 of Tract 9328, and after having conducted a hearing on said matter, that the Planning Commission hereby recommends approval of said applications to the City Council.
Second.
And motion, support, call roll, please.
Commissioner Landrigan.
Aye.
Commissioner Lee.
Aye.
Commissioner Sheets.
Aye.
Commissioner Yasayan.
Aye.
Chair Kane.
Aye, and a vote of 5-0. The Planning Commission has approved general plan amendment case PGP 2010-002 and change of zone case PZON 2010-002. All right, Planning Department updates, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nicely
We
done.
have no updates.
Okay. All right, what's on our agenda for the next meeting?
We have 3 items on the next
Is
agenda.
your mic on?
Yes, it is. We have 3 items on the next agenda, so it should be a relatively short agenda. We have no appeals.
All right. Comments from commissioners? Motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
We are adjourned.